Next, we are honored to present Chair of the ACIIA Global Board for 2023-2024, Ms. Sally Ann Pitt. Sally Ann Pitt is the 2023-2024 Chair of the Global Board of Directors of the Institute of Internal Auditors and has been a director on the Global Board for the past 5 years. She is also a Provisional Fellow of the Institute of International Auditors Australia, a Certified Internal Auditor, and a Certified Government Auditing Professional. So please welcome Ms. Sally Ann, who will deliver a keynote address titled State of the Internal Audit Profession. Please welcome Ms. Sally Ann Pitt.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Wow, what a room. This is amazing. Congratulations to ACIIA, to ACIIA Indonesia for all you've done to make this happen, because it looks amazing and I know it's going to be an incredible couple of days. So I'm really fortunate to be here today to be able to talk about the state of the internal audit profession. And it's a really exciting place that we're in as internal auditors. So I want to share with you some of the key issues that we're facing, some of the key organisational risks that we're facing, and some of the things that we're doing as an institute. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time going through that. And I'm around today and tomorrow, and I'm really happy to speak to people about what we're doing at a global level at the Institute of Internal Auditors. So let's begin. So let's start by thinking about what some of the global business risks are. What are the risks that are facing organisations? And one of the things that the Institute of Internal Auditors has done in the last year is expand a research project that started in Europe called Risk in Focus. And we've expanded that to cover the whole world. So today I specifically want to focus on the risks that are impacting the Asia-Pacific region. So this Risk in Focus research was done late last year, and the results came out this year. I would encourage you all out there to get engaged in this research if you have the opportunity. It's something that we're going to be doing every year. So what did we see as part of this research? We had feedback from over 4,000 people. We did a number of roundtables. We spoke to people about what they felt the risks were that are impacting businesses and organisations now, and what will be the risks in the next few years. And also where internal audit's putting their effort. And if you look at the responses that we got from Asia Pacific, we had over 1,000 responses from there. So from this region, we've had more responses than from any of the other regions. I'd particularly like to call out in this research Japan and the impact, the feedback that we got from Japan, Taiwan. You know, we've had amazing responses from there. But if you'll see, we've really had responses covering quite a number of countries across the region. So what did the research tell us? Well, the research told us that the top 5 risks that are impacting organisations currently are cybersecurity, business continuity, human capital, and by human capital we mean the ability to attract and retain and develop the right people in our organisations. There were also market changes and regulatory change. But when we ask the question, what are the 5 risks? What are going to be the key risks that your organisation is facing over the next few years? So 3 years from now. What we see is that these risks are changing slightly. So digital disruption, heads of audit and other people who gave feedback to the survey, people believe that that's going to rise up to a number 2 risk. And climate change is going to rise from number 11 to number 5. So these are really important changes that are going to face organisations that we as internal auditors need to think about in terms of the assurance that we provide. So what did we ask also in the survey? We said, okay, what are the key risks that you're facing? What will you face? But also, where do you think that you're going to be placing your greatest effort in 3 years' time? And the 5 areas that internal auditors felt that they were going to be placing their greatest effort was cybersecurity, business continuity, regulatory change, governance, corporate reporting, and fraud. All important areas and all areas of risk that most organisations are facing. But the really interesting thing that I found from this survey, and it was a little bit peculiar for the Asia Pacific region, was that 3 of the 5 risks that people believe organisations are going to be facing in 3 years' time are not 3 of the areas that we're going to be putting our greatest effort into. And I think that's something for us to reflect on as internal auditors. Why, if we believe these are the greatest risk areas, are we not putting our most effort into? So let's start going into some of these issues. And I wanted to just reflect on 4 of these issues: cybersecurity, digital disruption, ESG, and human capital. And my intention is to talk a little bit about these issues, what we're facing in terms of how these can impact our organisations, but then also what we as internal auditors can do to start to address, to think about these issues. So let's start with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is such an important issue for all organisations. Recent research says that the cost of cybersecurity, cyber fraud, within organisations last year was $8 trillion. I can't even imagine what $1 trillion is. $8 trillion. But the really important thing is that that same research estimated that this year the cost was going to be $9.5 trillion, and next year the cost is going to be $10.5 trillion. So cybersecurity is costing our organisations an enormous amount, or cyber fraud is. The risks around cybersecurity. What do we know about where that risk is coming from? Well, we know that the top concerns for organisations, the number 1 key concern that most organisations believe that they face from cybersecurity and cyber threats is enterprise reputational risks. If you have a cyber attack, it is likely to damage your reputation. Most organisations also are hugely concerned about the data breach implications. And the third key issue around these cyber threats is around supply chain disruption. Where are these threats coming from? Well, the number 1 area they're coming from are actually organised cyber criminals. People who are doing this to make money. The number 2 area that they're coming from are hackers. Often these may be people who aren't doing it to make money, They're doing it as an entertainment, as their pastime, to see if they can do that. And then the third area that these threats are coming from are from people inside the organisation, which maybe is something that's even more important for us as internal auditors to think about. And in terms of the way these cyber threats are coming, a lot of them are coming through social engineering. The next area that they're coming through is advanced persistent threats, and the third area are ransomware. We know that most organisations employ some sort of security, artificial intelligence and automation to combat cyber threats. And we also know that if you do employ those type of protections against cyber threats, if you do have a cyber threat, the cost of that threat is significantly less than if you don't have those in place. So what does that mean? It means that the money spent on protecting against these cyber threats is cost effective. And so as internal auditors, we need to think about that in terms of how our organisations are dealing with cyber threats. So how can we be leaders in this space? What we can do is we can look at things like the reporting lines between the CIO, the CISO, the board. Who's taking responsibility for these things and how are they sharing the information around the organisation? We can also look at the way that management thinks about data structures. How are they structuring data within an organisation and how are they managing data across the organisation? And we can also look at how well our organisations are keeping up with global trends and understanding. These are all important because none of these actually requires us to be highly technical cyber auditors to do this. As internal auditors, we all have the capacity to do these things. So let's talk about digital disruption because it's a huge risk and a huge opportunity for organisations. So when we talk about the time it took to reach 1 million users, and people may have seen these figures before, from Netflix it took 3.5 years for it to get 1 million users. Fast forward these days to ChatGPT, it took a few days to get 1 million users. So digital disruption is real and the pace of digital disruption is accelerating. This is a really interesting slide and I don't put this up to scaremonger, but it actually comes from the World Economic Forum. So it's a really credible bit of research that says that at the moment we have 68% of tasks in occupations are done by humans and 32% are undertaken by machines. In just 3 years, the World Economic Forum believes that this will change by 9% in just 3 years. The important thing for us to look at with this is not to be scared that we're all about to lose our jobs, but to think about how we do our jobs and what other value we can offer. But also look at what that means for our organisation and the way digital disruption is impacting our organisations. I wanted to highlight this bit of research that's come out from the work that we've done for the Vision 2035 project And you may hear more about that over the next 2 days. And it's quite simply a bit of research, a very important bit of research that the ACIIA has done to look at where we're heading over the next 10 years and how we ensure we take control of that journey. And one of the really interesting things that came out of that, this is quite a busy slide, but each of the bars represents a different region across the world. And the last bar in each cluster is the Asia Pacific bar. And what it's saying is that there's sort of a reasonably low level of adoption of AI within organisations, within internal audit functions, but functions are thinking about what they're doing, and it varies a little bit, but it's reasonably consistent across the regions. I really want to draw your attention, though, to the last cluster of bars, because the last cluster of bars is about what are internal auditors doing in terms of AI? And that cluster is nothing. And the star that I've put on there, that 62%, reflects internal auditors in Asia Pacific. That 62% of internal auditors in Asia Pacific are doing nothing about AI, not even thinking about AI, because one of those groups is we're thinking about how we might adopt AI. That is really, really important for us to reflect on as internal auditors in this region, because we can't hide from the fact that digital disruption is real and we need to think about it. So what can we do? We need to engage with management around emerging technologies. We need to understand the risks and opportunities, but we need to be sharing these with management as well. We need to get a sense of how well our organisations are understanding these risks and opportunities. And we also need to think about how we as internal auditors can embrace these opportunities. I'm going to speak a little bit more this afternoon in my presentation about thinking different, but this is a really important area, I think, that we as internal auditors need to think different. So ESG, touching on this, and I apologise, I'm racing through things. You will get a copy of all of these slides, and I'm happy to speak more about them. The important thing about ESG is when we go back only, not too many years ago, the greatest value in organisations was from tangible assets. Now the greatest value in organisations is coming from intangible assets. And when we look at the risks that are facing organisations, and these are risks that the World Economic Forum have identified, it's saying that in the next 2 years, there's a series of risks that cover economic, environmental, societal, technological. They cover the risks that we're facing over the next 2 years are quite broad. Fast forward 10 years, the World Economic Forum believes that all of our top 10 risks are going to be ESG-related risks. The green risks are environmental risks. Those dark blue are technological. The red ones are societal. But you'll note that the technological risks, a lot of those even are coming around things like misinformation, disinformation. So the risks that we're facing are really changing. So what can we do about that when we think about ESG? Because I know when I work with a lot of internal audit functions, people can be quite scared about what their role as internal auditors can be in this space. Well, I would say the number one thing that you can do as internal auditors is make sure that the data that your organisation is releasing around things like sustainability, for sustainability reports, is accurate. You don't need to be an ESG expert. You need to be an expert in understanding things like data accuracy, where the data is coming from, how it's being interpreted. These are basic things that we as internal auditors can do, and we should be doing. The final sort of area I want to touch on is around human capital. And I'm really talking about this now from an internal audit perspective. We know human capital is an issue for organisations across the board, not just for internal audit. But it's a huge issue for internal audit as well. And without going through all of these figures, I really wanted to highlight that the key skills that we are struggling to find, develop and retain within internal audit are technological skills. So we need to think about what that means for us as we know that the world is becoming increasingly digitally disrupted. We need to ensure that we have those skills within our team to be able to effectively provide assurance over those risks. Again, a second set of data that came out that said from 2022 to 2023, what changed in terms of the challenges in recruiting internal audit staff. And one of the biggest changes has really been about the ability to access these technological skills. So we know that they're the skills that we need the most, but they're also the skills that are hardest to get. So we need to be very proactive in thinking about how we're going to address that. So what can we do? We can think about the capability needs that we need in our internal audit team and plan for those needs. We can look at the way that we recruit, retain and attract people into our internal audit functions and where we get those skills from. And then we can look more broadly at our organisation's HR framework and ensure that it's fit for purpose to meet the talent needs for the broader organisation, but that it also is okay for us as internal auditors as well. I wanted to spend just the last few minutes really talking about the Institute of Internal Auditors, because I don't think a lot of people out there really recognise and understand how big we are. We have nearly 250,000 members all around the world in 117 national institutes. And those 117 national institutes cover 170 countries and territories. We are massive and we have a massive influence. And working together, we have enormous power. Benito Ybarra, who was the global chairman before me, had a theme, One ACIIA. And since he was the chair 18 months ago, we've really focused on some areas that we as an institute can work as One ACIIA. One of those was the global risk report that I've referred to, ensuring that we as internal auditors have access to really good contemporary information around the risks and challenges that we're facing. But as an institute, we've also been very actively advocating for the profession, because it's important that we have a seat at the table with regulators and other key stakeholders. We've been spending time building partnerships. Those partnerships are within our regional bodies and our global board, but they're also with other stakeholders and other professional associations to make sure that we're leveraging the skills that are out there and creating value for our members. We've also been working on what we call catalyst groups because we recognise that all of the knowledge and the great ideas about internal audit don't happen to sit within the global headquarters in the USA. All of the knowledge and the great ideas about internal audit sits with all of us. So it's really important that we get groups of people together to come up with the way forward, not just rely on small numbers of people to do that. Finally, we've been really working to grow our membership, and that's everything from student members right through to people who are transitioning into internal audit as a mid-career change. Because we believe that if we do join and are members of our professional association, together we can support each other better. We've done all of that through developing and building a global strategic plan. I don't intend to go through that. Suffice to say that the plan that we have is a 7-year plan. It started a couple of years ago when we had new leadership at the ACIIA in the US, a new president and CEO, Anthony Pugliese. We're currently in about the midpoint of this planning process, and it's really at the moment all coming together about what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. But we've given ourselves another few years to get there. We believe that changing our profession is not something that we can do overnight. It takes planning, it takes thought, and we've given ourselves that path to get there and to get to the point we need to be at. So what am I encouraging you to take away from this presentation about the state of the profession? I think the most important thing that we need to do is we need to understand what the risks are that are facing our organisations and make sure that we as internal auditors are focused well on those risks. But we also need to look at the risks and opportunities that technology and digital disruption are providing to our organisations, but also to us as internal auditors. We need to understand the risks and we need to help our organisations manage those risks, but we shouldn't be scared by them either. We should leverage the opportunities when we can. That might mean that we need to rethink the capabilities that we've got in our teams to make sure we've got the right capabilities. And as I'll talk more this afternoon, we really need to think different about what we're doing as internal auditors, who we are as a profession, and how we do our work. Terima kasih for the opportunity to be here today. I wish you all an amazing conference, and I look forward to speaking with some of you over the next 2 days on a one-on-one basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Ellie and Pitt. Would you like to stay on the stage, Miss Ellie? I'm sorry. Yeah, would you like to stay on the stage to receive a token of appreciation? And we kindly invite Mr. Johnny Patimbang to give the token of appreciation. Once again, thank you, Miss Ellie and Pitt. Let's give a big applause. Thank you. You may be seated.